Chapter 2. Schoolboy in Medora. "You're cheating, Augustine." "That's a lie, Levinus." "Well, I never. I saw with my own eyes that you hid the nut in your hand. Let me see." Augustine opened his hand, but no nut, only a small black mark. "See?" insisted Levinus. "That is where you held the pitch ball. It has left a dirty mark on your hand." The boys were sitting on the stairs built along the outside of a house. They were playing a game called Find the Nut. On one of the steps were 3 nutshells with a small lump of pitch, taking the place of a nut in the middle. They hunched around the shells and watched eagerly as agile hands quickly took the pitch and hid it under one of the shells. The others had to guess under which shell it had been hidden, but if the player hid the pitch in his hand, they would of course always guess wrong. That is what Augustine had done. Levinus was the first one to notice and yelled out, "You're cheating, Augustine." Augustine had won many games by cheating, but now that he had been exposed, he was furious. Quick as a flash, he hit Levinus in the face, and Levinus promptly hit him back. The boys quickly took sides, but most of them were against Augustine because he had cheated. That is why he went home with a bloody nose and other painful reminders of the fight. Go home, but not to Mother Monica. He now lived in Medora, an ancient Numidic city, where Maximus, an old friend of his father, had taken him in. After the episode with the pears, both Augustine's father and mother had realized that things could not continue the way they were. Augustine could not remain in Tagaste. He would have to go somewhere else. They decided to send him to Medora, only a few miles from Tagaste. That was not too far, and when Maximus had promised to give him a home, things had been quickly organized. He would attend the Latin school in Medora. On a beautiful autumn morning, Augustine, mounted on his horse, had ridden to his new hometown. Monica had been loath to see the 12-year-old boy go. What would become of him? Oh, if only she could go with him, but that was impossible. Her duties were to her husband and the rest of the family here in Tagaste. Prayer was the only thing left to her now, and pray for Augustine she did. Every day. She knew Medora. It was a place of sinful heathen people. There were also heathen temples in Medora. Certainly Maximus would keep an eye on him, but would that be enough? Studying posed no problem for Augustine. He thoroughly enjoyed it. Here he could really show his teachers what he could do, but studying did not take up all of his time. He spent much of it playing games, particularly Find the Nut. You could win quite a bit with that, especially if you cheated. All he had won today, however, was a thrashing and a bloody nose. If he ever got hold of that Levinus. When the boy arrived home, Maximus asked him what had happened. "Fought with Levinus, that rat." "Ah, Levinus. Yes, he has a strong pair of hands." "Who started, August?" "Naturally not you." "Of course not." "But why would he beat you like this?" "Wait a minute. I'll go see him and give him a piece of my mind. We cannot have him going around giving innocent boys bloody noses. What does he think he's doing?" Maximus began to walk to the door, but that was exactly what Augustine did not want. He was sure that Levinus would expose him. So he said, "Never mind, he became upset over the game." "Which game?" "Find the Nut." "Ah, now I see. You cheated, did you?" Yes, I thought so. Levinus may be rough, he is not a cheat. That is what you are, Augustine." Of course he became angry, and I suppose this fight was the result? "Yes, that's about it." "Well, I shall personally go and thank Levinus. He has done you a favor, boy. Cheating is low, and the sooner you stop it, the better it will be for everyone, including yourself. Now go to bed before I give you a taste of my hands also." Augustine looked at his landlord. Was he serious? Yes, he could see in his eyes that he was, and before Maximus could put his threat into action, Augustine had fled to his room. Once there, he was so preoccupied with the thought of taking revenge on Levinus that he forgot to pray. That was not the first time, either. He had made a solemn promise to Mother Monica that he would pray each evening before going to bed, but often his mind was so busy with Latin essays, games, or like right now, plans of vengeance, that he completely forgot about prayer. That night, he thought for a long time about how he would get even with Levinus, and when he finally did fall asleep, he had it all worked out. It was a few days later. On a large block of granite in a field outside Medora stood Augustine. Several schoolchildren were grouped around him, listening attentively to what he had to say. "Men of Carthage," he began, "listen to your leader, Hannibal, who has always led you to victory. Over there you can see the armies of your arch-enemies, the Romans. Their leader is the treacherous Scipio. We fear him not. Are we not Carthaginians? We shall totally destroy the Romans, and Scipio will hang from the highest tree." The boys smiled. Most of them knew only too well why their leader was so violently opposed to Scipio. The boy playing the role of Scipio was none other than Lavinus, who only a few days before had given Augustine such an unmerciful beating. Augustine concluded his speech with, "Long live Carthage! Let all join in the battle and destroy Scipio and the Romans." The armies advanced, and soon the boys were engaged in a very real battle. Augustine, however, took little notice of that. He and a few friends had arranged to capture Lavinus and give him the beating of a lifetime, and so it happened. Augustine and his friends forced their way through the fighting hordes, and before Lavinus realized it, he was surrounded by enemies. 10 against 1. A cowardly trick, but Augustine hardly could care less. He was going to get even with Lavinus for his bloody nose. He was out for revenge, and he would stoop to anything to get it. In a wink, Lavinus was on the ground, with fists raining down on his body, face, and legs from all directions. This cowardly attack made the boy furious, but he was in no position to do anything about it. He was completely overpowered. Augustine's fist landed in the middle of his face. Blood gushed from his nose. "That's for you," he sneered. "And remember, one thing is forever true. You hit me, and I'll hit you." Lavinus screamed, more in frustration than in pain, but in the ruckus, none of his friends noticed that he was in trouble. Suddenly, things changed. The Romans looked for Hannibal and immediately saw the group of boys attacking Lavinus. They all rushed to his aid, and when they saw how he had been manhandled, their fury knew no bounds. They tore the clump of boys apart and grabbed Augustine by his hair. They had suddenly realized the real purpose of this battle, and now the great Hannibal was really in for a thrashing. They did not stop until his nose was bleeding as well. Then they topped it off with a black eye. Beaten, bleeding, and with his clothes in tatters, Augustine arrived back at Maximus's house, and there received a second punishment. He was sent to bed without a meal and barred from playing outside for a whole week. However, that was not all. Augustine's teacher became involved too, because Lavinus complained of his cheating and about his unfair attack during their war game. Augustine was severely punished, and only diligence, displayed in his schoolwork, prevented him from being permanently expelled from school. School was the only thing he enjoyed, and he studied very hard, especially in Virgil, a Latin poet he was well versed. He knew many of his works by heart. He even read in bed, and many times Maximus had to pull the books from his hand, as he had also done at mealtimes. So it went on for a good 3 years. Diligent study, playing, fighting, and then it was all over. Augustine was honored as top student, and his teachers had nothing but praise for his work. He then returned to Tagaste, nearly 16 years old.